Welcome back. All right, so some news of the day for all you fine people on the internet. I'm wearing a Toledo Walleye jersey just because, why not? I like to just wear whatever random jerseys. Now, I find it more entertaining to wear a jersey that people are going to watch a video and go, wait, when did he get that and where did he get that? So anyways, news of the day, of course, what everybody's talking about is Morgan Rielly coming out of last night. Marty Biron was predicting it would just be a fine. No, it's an in-person hearing, so this is a long potential suspension for Morgan Rielly, and it will be held Tuesday at New York head office for the National Hockey League. So, yeah, Rielly gets to go in and plead his case. We'll see if that makes any difference to how many games he gets, but this does mean 5 or more. So, my guess is 6. It's what we saw with Perron. I think 6 is where we're going to end up on this, but who knows, right? So the debate will continue. Again, you're allowed to score into an empty net. You can do it however you want. I don't really care. It just, and the funny thing too is I keep saying, oh, it's hot dogging. Well, yeah. What is wrong with guys celebrating? What's wrong with guys, maybe rub it in a little bit. And if a team can't take that, then don't lose. And we do need more rivalries in the NHL, so yeah, great. Problem being, of course, Toronto and Ottawa are done with each other for the year, so they won't see each other again until next fall. And who knows what the rosters are going to look like at that point. So, yeah, you guys can let me know how many games you think Rielly's going to get, but he does get a chance to argue his case in person. Dominic Toninato has been waived by the Winnipeg Jets. Toninato's a player that I like that plays fourth line minutes. He has passed through waivers before. I have no doubt that he could pass through waivers again. We're close enough to the trade deadline, though, where there might be a team that says, you know what, we'll pick up Toninato. We want to change up our bottom 6. So we'll see if he passes through. Max Willman, placed on waivers by New Jersey. I would think he gets through. He's already gotten through this year. Same as Toninato, so we'll see if they both clear or not. But yeah, so Toninato, if I had a choice one of the two, he'd be the one that I would pick. But yeah, I understand why they're on waivers. Harvey Pinard, who got injured last night. It was a collision with Newhook. I misheard during the game. I thought it was Newhook that left. It was Harvey Pinard. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. It's a lower body injury for him. So it didn't look great at the time, and it looks worse now. The Montreal Canadiens, of course. The one thing with this is they're not really in any kind of a chase for the playoffs. So you just want Harvey Pinard to be healthy. He's been injured before this season, hasn't he? So at any rate, I like Raphael Harvey Pinard. I think he's a good player, and hopefully he's back sooner. Hopefully it's the 4 weeks rather than 6. I like the player a lot. Marcus Foligno, lower body injury for him with Minnesota Wild. He's expected to miss at least the next 2 games. So it may end up being more than that, but at this point it's the next 2 games that he's going to miss. Foligno, a huge part of a Minnesota team that seems to be starting to put things together. We'll see if that's affected by Foligno's injury or if they're able to continue their seeming upward momentum. It's there. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Foligno. Grzelcyk was fined for spearing Pacioretty. Pacioretty did leave the game briefly. He did come back in. I've seen people saying that should have immediately been a suspension. However, spearing a guy below the belt hasn't traditionally been a suspension. Wasn't it Ovi that speared a guy last year and got a fine for it as well? So it does feel like that's kind of standard. No injury involved. And yes, you should take more action for a guy getting a shot to the head that could lead to a concussion than a guy who takes a shot below the belt where they're wearing a cup. And it can hurt. I'm not saying it can't hurt because it can hurt like hell. But the chance of there being some real damage, less likely than if you're dealing with potential concussions, right? And so, Pacioretty was in the lineup today for Washington, seemed okay. Grzelcyk gets the fine, which means if he does it again, I don't think he will, but if he does it again, then we'll be looking at a fine for him. I didn't think it was as premeditated as other people thought either, so at any rate, it's a fine. That way, nobody's happy. People that thought that it wasn't that bad of a play won't like there's a fine. People who thought it should have been a fine will be mad about how much the fine is, which is not very much. And people who wanted a suspension will be mad it's a fine. So that way you make nobody happy. That's the Department of Player Safety motto, right? 5-game goal scoring streak now for Oetkin. He sits, I believe it's 59 goals behind Gretzky in the overall chase. So this 5-game goal scoring streak, if he can make this, say, a 10-game goal scoring streak, then people will be jumping back on the Oetkin train as to his ability to catch Wayne Gretzky. But again, 59 goals, it's definitely a reachable mark for him. and I'm glad to see him back scoring goals. He'd had a really rough time of it over the first half of the season. It looks like he's going to have a much more productive second half, which is interesting because last year he was far more productive in the first half of the season than the second. So I guess it's just kind of a reverse that's going on. There was a PWHL trade today. It is the first trade in the history of the Professional Women's Hockey League. So I figured this does deserve to be in the video. Absolutely. So Minnesota picks up Sophie Jacques, a defense person. I want to say defenseman. I mean, you could still say defenseman, right? I'm going to say defenseman. She's 23. She was the number 10 draft pick of the Minnesota team because they don't have names. So the Minnesota team, when the draft was done, she's played 7 games for Boston. Sorry, Sophie Jacques has played 7 games for Boston. -4 in those 7 games, but Minnesota's had a little bit of a better time of it than Boston. So Sophie is seen as a really good young player and part of what's going to be a really good young core for Minnesota. For Boston, they pick up a forward and a defenseman. Anyways, the forward they pick up is Susanna Tapani. She's 30, was selected in the 5th round by Minnesota, now traded to Boston. In 9 games for Minnesota, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, and a +7 in those games. So again, Minnesota, pretty darn good team. This adds a little forward depth for Boston. Boston also picks up Abby Cook. She's 25. She signed as a free agent, was not taken in the initial draft. She played 9 games for Minnesota, just the 1 goal, also a +3. One thing worthy of note with PWHL, goal scoring relatively low, points relatively low. So those 5 points in 9 games, from an NHL perspective, that would be like around 7 points in 9 games, as far as I can tell. Because again, the scores have been pretty low for the Women's Hockey League. But yeah, so we'll see if this changes things. So if you're a PWHL fan, how do you feel about this trade? Again, for Boston, they're picking up 2 players for the price of 1, but the player going to Minnesota is seen as having a really high ceiling and is 23 years of age. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.